In this video, I'm going to explain how you can learn Turkish within 6 months at home and for free, specifically reaching a B1 level, a slower intermediate or conversational fluency. And this is based on my own personal experience, and except I'm just telling you exactly the pieces that you need, as I had to do some experimentation in order to figure this out. So in order to do this, I'm going to break everything down into 4 categories that you need to tackle to achieve your goal. First, there is input, that's reading and listening. Then there's vocabulary, memorizing words. Then there is grammar, and then output, that's speaking and writing. So roughly speaking, you want to spend most of your time on input, or at least let's say half or more of your time in a given day or over the whole period on input. Secondly, you want to spend maybe a quarter of your time on vocabulary, memorizing words. Lastly, grammar and output together, you can spend a quarter of the time on them together. The reason I'm combining grammar and output is that I would say at the beginning stage, you want to just do grammar, and only towards the end, let's say month 5 and month 6, you would do output. You would work on speaking and writing. Now, obviously, your progress will vary depending on how many hours you can put in each day. So if you're able to put in 4 hours a day, then I believe you can achieve B1 level within 6 months. If you can put in 2 hours, then it'll take you a year, and so on. So with that in mind, let's get started with input. So input is about reading and listening. So the main resource I recommend is the Link Ministories. Link is LingQ. It's a website as well as an app, and it has a paid membership, but you don't need the paid membership. You can just use the free version, which allows you to access the content, and that's what you care about, the content. The content is basically a bunch of stories that are from A1 to B1 level, and they gradually get more difficult. There's 60 mini stories, very short stories, and what you want to do is that you want to read and listen to these stories over and over. So you will start with story 1, and with story 1 you can start by just listening and reading at the same time. Have one go at it. It'll be probably too difficult at the beginning, it'll just be noise. Then you'll just start reading it on your own, taking your time reading it, and just constantly looking things up in Google Translate. And as you look up words, obviously everything will be a new word for you. You want to add it to a flashcard. I'll discuss the flashcard system in more detail in the second category of vocabulary. But the basic idea is that you go through each story, listening and reading to it, reading it on your own, listening to it without reading. Anytime that you're going for a walk, you're washing dishes, I recommend you just listen to these stories over and over. Once you finish story 1, you move on to story 2. Once you finish story 1, I don't mean finish as in fully understand. You won't at the beginning, but you'll just get some idea of what's going on. At least when you're reading on your own and taking your time, you'll have some idea of what's going on in the story. And then once you finish story 1, you can move on to story 2, story 3. You might reach, let's say, story 5, and it's just way too hard for you. Then you just go back to story 1, and then you just rinse and repeat. Just keep doing this iterative rotation type system, and you'll basically get, with each iteration, you'll get more and more clarity, and things will make more and more sense. Over time, you'll notice that stories that were extremely difficult for you will all of a sudden become very easy, or at least easier. And the goal is that by the end of the 6 months, you'll be able to understand all of these stories by just listening to them. And that's basically it with regards to input. That's the only really resource that you need to get to B1. Now, if you want more, there is a lot of other content on Link. You could consider looking into, I think it's called Who She Is, or just you can just browse and search for other content if you want more content. But I think it's the mini stories are the key, because essentially they're all within sort of the A1 to B1 level. They'll get you there just by going through these stories. Secondly, now let's move on to vocabulary. Vocabulary, there are 2 main things to consider with regards to vocabulary to be really efficient with vocabulary. One is frequency lists. You want to find lists of the most commonly used words, so that you don't end up wasting time learning words that you'll never use. And secondly, there is a spaced repetition system. You want to use a system that efficiently helps you memorize words as fast as possible. So first, with regards to frequency lists, I recommend, there's 2 things. One is that I recommend you download the app Tobo, T-O-B-O. This has 3,500 most commonly used words. So you can just go through these words one by one, and they will all be relatively common words, and learn them as you go. However, with regards to learning them, I don't recommend using the Tobo app to learn them. Just use the Tobo app to get the list of words, essentially. For learning them, use a spaced repetition system, or SRS. All that means is just a flashcard system that uses an algorithm that tries to optimize how often you need to see the words in order to memorize them quickly. This will make things a lot faster for you. So one free app you can use that's a free SRS flashcard app is called Anki. I used Anki, and I would just create 2 decks in Anki, one from Turkish to English, the other deck from English to Turkish. So as you go through the words in Tobo, I would just add them one by one into both of these decks. And so the deck that's English to Turkish, that means on the front side it's English, and then you have to guess what's on the back, and vice versa. So that basically covers, and then on top of that, just circling back to the input, as you're reading those stories, if there's a word that you don't know, you haven't already learned from the Tobo list, you can add it into Anki as well. So that's how you'll learn words, basically, by creating flashcards in Anki and going through the flashcards, reviewing them every day. Anki will just give you identify what words you need to review each day, basically. And that covers vocabulary. Now, third, grammar. Now, grammar should not be the focus. As I said, grammar and output together should only be like 25% of your time. So with regards to grammar, the main idea is that you want to use it to help you understand what you're reading. Because I believe ultimately in the comprehensible input hypothesis, which was made by Dr. Stephen Krashen, that the way we acquire languages, it is through reading and listening, through getting messages that we understand. So in order to make messages, basically the LingQ mini stories, understandable, first there is just memorizing the vocabulary. That's one thing that will help. And then the other thing is understanding the grammar, so that you understand how the words are put together in order to form meaning. So with regards to grammar, I would recommend you search on YouTube for language transfer, introduction to Turkish, and it's just a free course. It's just a bunch of short videos that are just audio basically, and it'll explain everything regarding basic grammar in Turkish. Another video, that free video on YouTube you can look up, is just type in Glossika Turkish, and you'll find a video that also within like 15 minutes explains all the basic grammar in Turkish as well. So that'll give you a high-level idea. The main thing here is that you want to spend some time on grammar to help you understand the stories that you're reading. That's what you really have to do. Now, if there are any advanced grammar that is not explained in the language transfer course or in that video by Glossika, what I recommend, you can simply just Google. If you have a certain word or sentence you can't figure out, you can try and just Google and find an answer. But the resource that I found that covers almost everything that has to do with Turkish grammar, which is also free, is Foreign Service Institute Turkish. So you can just Google FSI Turkish PDFs, and you can download 2 PDFs that cover just about everything that has to do with Turkish grammar. You don't need to, this will seem overwhelming, you don't need to read all of these. The main idea is that if you come across some weird thing in grammar-wise that you can't figure out, you just look at the table of contents in these PDFs by FSI, and chances are you'll find sections that discuss them and explain them. So then you can understand them, and that will help your comprehension when you're reading and listening. Finally, we have output, which is speaking and writing. So with regards to speaking and writing, I recommend you don't even worry about this until, let's say, month 5 and month 6, when you have a good level of comprehension, when you already understand most of the stories. At that point, a simple exercise you can do with just writing, take your time and just write a summary of the story that you read, without referring to the story. Try and write what happened, what you think happened, and then you can refer to the story and make corrections based on that. You can also use Google Translate to make corrections to what you're doing. But obviously, at least spend some time writing on your own without using Google Translate, without using anything else. This will help practice your output. The other free resource with regards to speaking to natives for free at home is Lingbe, Lingbe. With this app, you can talk to native Turkish speakers and have a conversation. Usually be basic conversation. You'll talk about what do you do, how are you doing, where do you live, that sort of thing. And recommend trying to do this, let's say month 5, month 6, and this will give you some speaking practice for free at home. Finally, in order to check whether or not you're at a B1 level, at least from a comprehension perspective, I would recommend just simply type B1 test Turkish in YouTube, and you'll find videos that give you an actual sort of a mini test where you'll see a bunch of questions. I recommend writing them down on a piece of paper. Then you'll listen to some audio. Then you'll have like twice. Then you'll have a couple of minutes in order to write the answers based on what you listen to. And that will tell you whether or not you are at a B1 level. You should aim for higher than 62% to be at a B1 level comprehension-wise. With regards to speaking, if you're able to carry a conversation for, let's say, 15 minutes on Lingbe, then you're pretty much there from a speaking perspective. And I believe this is what matters in order for you to say you have conversational fluency. So I believe this covers everything. So we covered input, vocabulary, grammar, and output, and covered how you can achieve all of these, get all of these pieces together using free resources and at home in such a way that you can reach a B1 level within 6 months if you have, let's say, 4 hours to put in each day. But if you have less, then it'll take you a year or so, which will still be quite fast. And I hope you found this useful and beneficial. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell button. Thank you. Bye.